The champagne white lilies slipped from Emily Carter's trembling hands the second the black SUV door slammed behind her. Rain poured across the cemetery while she stood frozen beside Eleanor DeLuca's grave, whispering through tears, "I couldn't save you." Then he stepped out of the storm. Vincent DeLuca didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The entire cemetery seemed to go still when his cold, gray-blue eyes locked onto the soaked Waitress standing beside his mother's grave at 2 in the morning. Emily tried to leave, but Vincent already knew her name. And somehow, he knew she came back every single year. What began as guilt quickly turned into something far more dangerous when Vincent discovered the woman his mother died trying to save had been suffering alone this entire time. And if something about this feels off, hit subscribe and drop a comment if something doesn't sit right with you. Now, this is where it starts.
Some people walk into hospitals praying to save someone they love. I walked in praying nobody noticed I was falling apart. The hospital smelled like bleach, burnt coffee, and exhaustion. It was almost 1:30 in the morning, and my feet hurt so badly I could feel my heartbeat in my shoes. I had just finished an 8-hour shift at Bellamy's Diner downtown where drunk businessmen tipped with fake smiles and cold fries, but rent in Manhattan didn't care if you were tired. Neither did overdue utility bills. So instead of going home to my tiny studio apartment in Queens, I pushed through the sliding doors of St. Vincent Medical Center wearing the same black waitress uniform I'd spilled coffee on 3 hours earlier. The night receptionist barely looked up when she saw me. She already knew why I was there. "Roommate 14, she whispered. "She's been asking for you." I nodded and tightened my grip on the paper bag holding chicken soup and fresh bread from the diner kitchen. Mrs. Margaret DeLuca hated hospital food. Said it tasted like wet cardboard and disappointment. The elevator hummed softly as it climbed toward the VIP floor. Even the elevator felt richer up there. Cleaner. Quieter. Like money itself had soundproofed the walls. When the doors opened, silence wrapped around me immediately. Soft lighting glowed against marble floors. Expensive artwork hung on the walls. The nurses spoke in careful voices, almost nervous, like someone important was always listening. Maybe they were. I walked past 2 security guards near the hallway entrance. Big men in dark suits who never smiled. They watched everyone, especially me. The first night I came here, they searched my bag twice because they couldn't believe a waitress carrying soup belonged on the 8th floor. Now they just nodded. Roommate 14 sat at the end of the hallway. I pushed the door open slowly and found Margaret awake, staring out the window at the Manhattan skyline glowing against the rain. "You're late," she muttered without turning around. I smiled despite myself. I had customers who thought ranch dressing was a personality trait. That earned me a quiet laugh. Small, raspy, real. Margaret DeLuca was in her 70s with silver hair, pale skin, and sharp blue eyes that missed absolutely nothing. Most nurses avoided her because she was demanding and stubborn, but I understood her. Lonely people usually sounded angry before they sounded hurt. "You brought the soup?" she asked. "Of course." I set the bag down and poured the soup carefully into a bowl while she adjusted herself against the pillows. Her hands trembled slightly. Heart condition, chronic pain, pride that refused help anyway. "You know," she said quietly, "you don't get paid to stay past visiting hours." "I know." "Then why do you keep coming back?" I froze for half a second. Because nobody ever asked me that. Not honestly. I looked down at the steam rising from the soup before answering softly. "Because everyone deserves someone who stays." The room went silent after that. Not uncomfortable, just heavy somehow. Rain tapped gently against the giant windows while machines beeped softly beside her bed. Margaret looked at me differently then, like she was trying to memorize my face. I handed her the spoon carefully, but her hand shook too much to hold it steady. "Here," I whispered. "I got it." So I fed her slowly while the city glowed outside like another universe entirely. She pretended not to notice when I fixed her blanket afterward. Pretended not to notice when I adjusted the lamp because the light bothered her eyes. Old people do that sometimes. They hide gratitude because needing people scares them. Around 2:17 a.m., Margaret finally fell asleep. Her breathing softened, peaceful for the first time all night. I sat beside her bed quietly, exhaustion pulling at every inch of my body. My eyelids burned, My hands smelled like coffee and hospital sanitizer. I didn't even realize I'd fallen asleep holding her hand until the sound of the door opening woke me. Heavy footsteps entered the room. Slow, controlled, dangerous in the kind of way expensive men usually are. I looked up instinctively, and every ounce of air left my lungs. A tall man stood near the doorway in a black wool coat still damp from the rain outside. Broad shoulders, dark hair pushed back neatly, gray eyes sharp enough to cut through steel. Four men in suits lingered silently behind him, but none of them mattered, because the man in front did. The entire room changed the second he walked in, like power itself had stepped through the door. His eyes moved from his sleeping mother down to my hand still wrapped around hers. Then he went completely still. Nobody spoke for at least 5 full seconds. The rain outside filled the silence while the machines beside Margaret's bed beeped softly like nervous little heartbeats. I pulled my hand away from hers so fast it almost hurt. "I am sorry," I whispered, standing too quickly from the chair beside the bed. I did not mean to fall asleep. The man near the doorway kept staring at me. Not at my face. Not even at my uniform. At the place where my hand had been holding his mother's. His expression did not change, but somehow the room felt tighter anyway. Controlled. Dangerous. One of the men behind him stepped forward slightly, like he expected trouble from a tired waitress wearing non-slip diner shoes. The tall man lifted one finger without looking away from me. The bodyguard stopped immediately. That tiny movement told me everything I needed to know about him. Men obeyed him without questions. Margaret stirred softly against the pillows. "Lucien," she murmured sleepily. "You are late again." So this was Lucien DeLuca. Even I knew that name. Everybody in New York knew it, though nobody said it too loudly. Real estate headlines. Expensive charity galas. Rumors whispered in diners and subway stations after midnight. Powerful. Untouchable. Dangerous depending on who was talking. I suddenly became very aware of how wrinkled my waitress uniform looked. Lucien stepped closer to the bed, removing dark leather gloves one finger at a time. Expensive watch. Tailored black coat. Calm eyes that missed nothing. "I had business in Brooklyn," he said quietly. His voice surprised me. Deep. Controlled. The kind that made people lower theirs automatically. Margaret rolled her eyes. "You always have business." Then she pointed weakly toward the soup bowl beside her bed. "This one brought me real food. Unlike this prison pretending to be a hospital." I tried not to smile. Lucien glanced at the empty soup container, then at me again. "You work here?" he asked. "Part-time," I answered carefully. "Mostly nights." "She works too much," Margaret muttered. "She looks exhausted all the time." "Mother." "What?" "I have eyes." I looked down awkwardly, smoothing invisible wrinkles from my apron. Nobody had called me exhausted with concern in a very long time. Usually they just called me slow. Lucien studied me another second before speaking again. "What is your name?" "Evelyn Carter." "How long have you been caring for my mother, Miss Carter?" Caring. The word caught me off guard. Nobody had ever described what I did that way. "A few weeks," I admitted quietly. "Only when I finish my diner shifts." "And the hospital pays you overtime for this?" "No," one of the bodyguards frowned slightly behind him like my answer offended him somehow. Lucien's expression stayed unreadable. "Then why stay?" The exact same question Margaret had asked earlier. I swallowed softly. "Because she should not be alone at night." Silence again. Heavy this time. Lucien looked at his mother. Really looked at her. The pale skin. The tired eyes. The way her breathing eased when someone sat beside her bed. Something shifted in his face for half a second before disappearing completely. Margaret broke the tension first. "Evelyn reads to me," she announced proudly. "And she cheats at crossword puzzles." "I do not cheat," I protested automatically. "You absolutely cheat." To my horror, Margaret smiled. An actual smile. Warm enough to erase 10 years from her face. Every person in the room noticed it instantly. One of the nurses passing outside the glass doors stopped walking altogether. Lucien noticed too. His eyes lingered on his mother's expression longer than anything else. "She has not smiled much lately," he said quietly. I did not know what to say to that. The city outside flickered through the rain behind him while silence settled over the room again. Then Lucien reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the bedside table beside me. A black card with silver lettering. No company name. Just a phone number. "If my mother needs anything," he said calmly, "you call that number directly." I stared at the card without touching it. "I cannot afford people like you," I said before my brain could stop my mouth. One of the guards looked horrified. Margaret covered a laugh with her hand. But Lucien just watched me with those cold gray eyes for a long moment before speaking softly. "That was not a business offer, Miss Carter." He glanced once more toward the chair beside his mother's bed. The chair where I had fallen asleep holding her hand. It was gratitude. By the time I finally left the hospital, the rain had stopped but Manhattan still looked soaked in silver. Streetlights reflected off wet sidewalks while taxis rushed past like streaks of yellow light, disappearing into the dark. I kept Lucien DeLuca's black card buried deep inside my coat pocket the entire subway ride home like it might burn through the fabric if I touched it too long. Queens smelled different at 4 in the morning. Less expensive perfume. More wet concrete, old takeout containers, and exhausted people trying to survive another week. I climbed 3 flights of narrow stairs to my apartment with aching legs and fingers stiff from cold weather. Apartment 3B greeted me the same way it always did. Flickering kitchen light. Broken radiator clanking like it was fighting for its life. My younger brother asleep on the couch because his room got too cold during winter nights. Ben was 19 and still looked 16 when he slept. Blonde hair falling into his face. Inhaler resting on his chest. I stood there quietly for a second just watching him breathe. That was how I measured good days now. By breathing. By survival. By whether the people I loved made it through another night. I draped my diner jacket over the chair and moved carefully toward the kitchen, trying not to wake him. The refrigerator held exactly half a gallon of milk, eggs, and leftover noodles. Payday was still 3 days away. I sighed softly and opened the cabinet above the sink where I hid the emergency cash inside an empty cereal box. $27. Enough for groceries or Ben's prescription refill. Not both. My phone buzzed suddenly against the counter, making me jump. Kelsey from the diner. "Please tell me you can cover lunch tomorrow," she groaned immediately after I answered. Diana quit again. I closed my eyes. "Kelsey, I worked 14 hours already." "I know, honey, but Rick is losing his mind downstairs." Of course he was. Rick lost his mind every Thursday. "Fine," I whispered finally. "But I cannot stay late. You are a lifesaver." No. Lifesavers had savings accounts and health insurance. I had 2 jobs and 72 cents in my checking account. After the call ended, I leaned against the kitchen counter and rubbed my eyes hard enough to hurt. That was when I noticed it. An envelope sitting beneath the apartment door. My stomach tightened immediately. Bills usually came through the mailbox downstairs. Nobody slid envelopes under doors unless they wanted your attention. Picked it up carefully. No stamp. No address. Just my name written in clean black ink. Evelyn Carter. Something cold moved down my spine. I opened it slowly. Inside was a folded piece of paper from St. Vincent Medical Center. At first I thought it was another payment notice until my eyes landed on the balance. Paid in full. Ben's overdue asthma treatment bill. Every single dollar. I stopped breathing for a second. There had to be a mistake. I checked the name again. Benjamin Carter. Remaining balance. $0. My fingers tightened around the paper. Nobody knew about Ben except close friends and hospital staff. Nobody except me had access to those records. Then I remembered the black card. The quiet voice. "If my mother needs anything." My chest tightened with something dangerously close to panic. Rich men gave flowers. Powerful men erased problems. There was a difference. I grabbed my phone immediately and searched his name before I could stop myself. Lucien DeLuca. Hundreds of articles appeared instantly. Billionaire investor. Real estate empire. Philanthropist. Rumor ties to organized crime. Photographs from galas and political dinners filled the screen. Every picture showed the same thing. Expensive suits. Controlled expression. Eyes that looked almost emotionless. But one article caught my attention more than the others. The Ghost of Manhattan. That was what one newspaper called him. A man nobody could pressure. Nobody could embarrass. Nobody could reach emotionally. I stared at the photograph for a long moment. Then I thought about the way he looked at his mother sleeping peacefully in that hospital bed. Not cold then. Not distant. Just tired. Human. My phone buzzed again suddenly, nearly slipping from my hand. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello. Silence for half a second. Then his voice. Calm. Deep. Instantly recognizable. Miss Carter, Lucien said quietly. My mother is asking for you again. I should have said no. Any normal person would have. Men like Vincent DeLuca did not call women like me at 4 in the morning unless trouble followed behind them wearing expensive shoes. But there was something in his voice during that phone call that stayed with me after it ended. Not control. Not intimidation. Exhaustion. The kind that settled into a person's bones after carrying too much for too long. By the time I returned to St. Vincent the next evening, rain was falling again across Manhattan in thin silver lines that blurred the city lights outside the taxi window. My diner shift had been brutal. A customer spilled soda across table 7 and blamed me for gravity. Rick yelled at 2 waitresses and burned his hand on the grill. My feet felt like broken glass inside my shoes. But somehow the 8th floor of the hospital had started feeling quieter than my real life. Safer maybe. The security guards near the VIP hallway recognized me immediately this time. One of them even opened the glass door before I reached it. That should have terrified me more than it did. Roommate 14 glowed softly in the darkness. Margaret sat awake in bed wearing a pale blue sweater instead of her hospital gown. Silver hair brushed neatly back from her face. She looked less like a patient tonight. More like somebody's elegant grandmother waiting for tea. There she is, she announced the second I stepped inside. The only competent employee in this entire building. That seems unfair to the nurses, I laughed softly. The nurses wake me up every 2 hours. That is literally their job. Exactly. Annoying. I smiled. Despite myself and set my bag down beside the chair. The room smelled faintly like lavender soap instead of disinfectant tonight. Small changes. Human changes. You look tired, Margaret said quietly after studying my face for a second too long. I shrugged automatically. Long shift. You work too hard for somebody your age. That is because electricity companies insist on being paid. She laughed again, softer this time. I was helping her adjust her blankets when I felt it suddenly. That strange awareness of being watched. I turned instinctively toward the glass wall overlooking the hallway. Lucien stood there in the shadows beyond the door speaking quietly with one of the doctors. Black suit, dark gray tie, one hand resting inside his coat pocket, while the other held a folder filled with medical charts. Every person around him looked nervous, even the doctor. Lucien glanced toward the room mid-conversation. His eyes found mine instantly through the glass. Something about the directness of his stare made my chest tighten unexpectedly. Not flirtation. Worse, attention. He nodded once before returning to the conversation without missing a beat. Margaret noticed me looking. He has barely slept this week, she said quietly. How can you tell? I raised him. There was affection in her voice but sadness too. People think power fixes loneliness, she continued softly. It only makes it quieter. I did not know how to answer that. A few minutes later the door opened and Lucien stepped inside. The entire atmosphere shifted with him again. Calm but heavier somehow. Like the room itself understood he belonged in control of it. Mother, he said gently, your cardiologist says your blood pressure improved. That is because somebody finally feeds me soup that tastes like food. Lucien's mouth almost moved into a smile before disappearing again. Almost. He glanced toward the small paper bag sitting beside my chair. You brought dinner again. Only soup, I answered carefully. You should stop paying for things yourself, he said. You are not employed here. I did not do it for money. Silence. His gray eyes rested on me for a second too long before he looked away. Margaret watched both of us with open amusement. That woman missed absolutely nothing. Sit down, Lucien, she ordered suddenly. You look terrible. Mother, you have your father's habit of pretending exhaustion is a personality trait. To my complete shock, Lucien actually obeyed. He loosened his tie slightly and sat beside the window with the tired posture of a man carrying invisible weight across his shoulders. For the first time since meeting him, he looked less like Manhattan's most untouchable man and more like somebody's son. The rain tapped softly against the windows while the city glowed beneath us in gold and white lights stretching forever into the darkness. None of us spoke for a while. Then Margaret fell asleep halfway through complaining about hospital pudding. Lucien stood carefully and pulled the blanket higher over her shoulders with surprising gentleness. His movements slowed near her face. Protective. Careful. Human. When he turned back toward me, his voice dropped quieter than before. "She likes you," he said simply. I swallowed softly. "I like her too." Another silence. Different this time. Warmer somehow. Then his eyes moved toward the faded bruise near my wrist where I had burned myself carrying coffee trays at the diner earlier that week. His expression changed instantly. Colder. Sharper. "Who hurt your hand?" he asked quietly. My first instinct was to hide my hand behind my back, which probably answered his question better than words ever could. The room suddenly felt too quiet, too warm, too small for the way Vincent DeLuca was looking at me. His eyes stayed fixed on the fading mark near my wrist with a level of focus that made my stomach tighten unexpectedly. "Nobody hurt me," I answered quickly. Too quickly. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Men like him probably survive by hearing lies before people even finish speaking them. "You burned yourself?" he asked calmly. I nodded once. "Coffee machine accident at the diner." His expression did not soften exactly, but something in the tension around his shoulders eased slightly. "You should be more careful." The words sounded simple, but there was something underneath them. Something almost personal. Before I could answer, Margaret made a sleepy sound from the bed behind us without fully waking up. Lucien immediately looked toward her. The shift in him happened instantly again. Cold businessman disappearing beneath worried son. "She will need her medication in 20 minutes, I whispered quietly. "The nurse already prepared it." His eyes moved back to me. "You remember her schedule?" "Somebody should." The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Too honest. Too sharp. But Lucien did not seem offended. If anything, he looked thoughtful. Like he was hearing criticism from someone for the first time in years. "You think I neglect her?" he said finally. I shook my head immediately. "I think you are busy." That is a polite answer. It is the true one. Silence settled between us while rain streaked down the giant windows overlooking Manhattan. Somewhere far below, ambulance sirens echoed through the city like distant ghosts. Lucien loosened his tie slightly again, exhaustion finally visible around his eyes now that I was close enough to notice. Not weak exhaustion. Heavy exhaustion. The kind powerful people carried privately because the world never allowed them to fall apart in public. "You should go home," he said quietly after a moment. "You can barely stay awake. So can you." His mouth almost twitched again. "Barely. I have been informed I inherited my mother's stubbornness." I noticed. This time he actually looked amused for half a second before the expression disappeared completely. The problem with rare smiles was that they stayed in your head longer than they should. Margaret shifted again in her sleep. Without thinking, I moved toward the bed and adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. Lucien watched the entire thing silently. Every movement. Every careful touch. I became painfully aware of his attention in a way that made me nervous for reasons I did not fully understand. Not because I thought he would hurt me. Worse, because I thought he was beginning to see me too clearly. My phone buzzed suddenly inside my pocket, making me jump slightly. Ben's name lit across the screen. I stepped toward the hallway instinctively. Before answering, "Hey, what is wrong?" "Nothing," my brother said quickly, which usually meant something was definitely wrong. "I just wanted to make sure you got home okay." I frowned. "Ben, I am still at the hospital." "Oh." Silence. Then quieter. "Some guy came by earlier." Every muscle in my body tightened instantly. "What guy?" "Tall. Expensive suit. Kind of terrifying." My heart stopped for one horrible second before he continued. "But he brought groceries." I closed my eyes slowly. Of course he did. "Ben. Relax." He was respectful. Said somebody wanted to make sure we had food in the apartment. I turned slowly toward the hospital room. Lucien still stood near the window, one hand in his pocket, watching the rain slide down the glass. Calm. Untouchable. Like rearranging someone's life was as ordinary as answering emails. Did he say who sent him? I asked quietly. No, Ben answered. But whoever it was paid for my inhaler refill too. My grip tightened around the phone. Do not open the door for strangers anymore. Evelyn. Ben's voice softened. Who are these people? I looked through the glass doorway at Lucien again. At the sharp suit. The tired eyes. The terrifying level of quiet control surrounding him like armor. He turned slightly then, sensing my stare immediately. I do not know yet, I whispered honestly. When I ended the call, Lucien spoke without looking away from me. Your brother should not worry about medication costs anymore. My chest tightened instantly. You cannot keep doing that. Why? Because people do not help for free. Finally he looked directly at me again. Gray eyes steady. Impossible to read. That is an interesting thing for somebody like you to believe, he said quietly. The strange thing about kindness is that it becomes terrifying when you are not used to receiving it. That thought followed me everywhere after that night. Through crowded subway cars. Through screaming customers at the diner. Through the sound of bills sliding beneath our apartment door like threats wrapped in paper. 3 days passed, and somehow Lucien DeLuca kept appearing in the edges of my life without actually being there. Ben's prescription. Refills stopped costing money. Our broken radiator got replaced by the landlord overnight after 6 months of ignored complaints. Even Rick at the diner suddenly stopped yelling at me in front of customers. The man once threw a plate because I forgot extra pickles. Now he asked if I wanted breaks. It was unnatural. Rich people donated money. Powerful people changed reality quietly. That difference kept me awake at night. Friday evening hit Manhattan wrapped in freezing rain and traffic lights reflecting across wet pavement like liquid gold. I arrived at St. Vincent exhausted enough to cry over minor inconveniences. My hair still smelled faintly like fryer oil from the diner shift. My back ached. My feet burned. But the moment I stepped onto the 8th floor, the tension in my chest eased slightly, which should not have happened. Hospitals were not supposed to feel comforting. Especially hospitals connected to men like Lucien. One of the nurses intercepted me halfway down the hallway. Miss Carter, she whispered urgently. Mrs. DeLuca refused dinner again. I sighed softly. How bad? She threatened to throw mashed potatoes at a cardiologist. Honestly, that feels medically understandable. The nurse laughed before catching herself quickly. People on this floor always seemed nervous about relaxing too much. I pushed open room 814 carefully and found Margaret sitting upright in bed wearing glasses low on her nose while criticizing a game show host on television. That man has the personality of expired yogurt, she announced immediately. Good evening to you too, I answered. Her face brightened instantly when she saw me. Not politely, genuinely. The kind of happiness people could not fake. You are late, she complained. I had work. Terrible excuse. I smiled despite myself and started fixing her dinner tray while she pretended not to watch me. The nurses said you skipped dinner again. Hospital chicken should legally qualify as emotional abuse. Margaret. See? Even you are starting to sound like my doctors. The room softened around moments like these. Small conversations. Warm soup. Television murmuring quietly in the background while rain tapped. Against the giant windows overlooking Manhattan. It almost felt normal sometimes. Dangerous thought. Very dangerous. I was helping Margaret with her medication when voices outside the hallway caught my attention. Low. Serious. Men in dark suits moved quickly past the glass doors while nurses suddenly avoided eye contact. The atmosphere changed instantly. Tighter. Colder. I looked toward the hallway just as Lucien appeared near the nurse's station speaking quietly into his phone. His expression looked carved from stone tonight. Controlled in the kind of way that made everyone around him nervous automatically. One of the televisions mounted near the hallway ceiling flashed suddenly to a breaking news segment. Federal investigators continue examining alleged connections between several New York financial firms and organized criminal networks reportedly tied to businessman Lucien DeLuca. My stomach tightened immediately. Images flashed across the screen. Black SUVs. Cameras. Headlines. Words like investigation and criminal ties appearing beneath Lucien's photograph in bold red letters. I looked instinctively toward him through the glass. He did not even glance at the television, like he was used to people discussing him like a storm everyone feared but nobody fully understood. Then one sentence from the reporter hit harder than the rest. Sources close to the investigation described DeLuca as untouchable within Manhattan's underground power structure. Underground power structure. My chest suddenly felt tight. All at once every strange detail finally connected inside my head. The bodyguards. The fear in the nurses. The quiet obedience from everyone around him. The way problems disappeared after he noticed them. Lucien turned slightly then, and our eyes met through the glass hallway. He immediately saw something had changed in my expression. Recognition. Fear maybe. Understanding. The call ended in his hand, but neither of us looked away. For the first time since meeting him, I saw it clearly. Not just the businessman. Not just the exhausted son sitting beside his sick mother. Something darker lived underneath the expensive suits and calm voice. Something powerful. Enough to make Manhattan whisper his name carefully after midnight. Margaret noticed the television a second too late. "Oh dear," she muttered softly. "That is unfortunate timing." I looked at her slowly. "You knew I did not know." She sighed deeply. Lucien tries very hard to keep certain worlds separated. By paying my bills? By protecting people he thinks deserve it. My pulse pounded hard enough to hurt. Outside the room, Lucien finally started walking toward the door with that same calm, controlled posture that somehow scared me more now than before. Because now I understood something terrifying. Men like Lucien DeLuca did not simply notice ordinary women. And they definitely did not let them walk away unchanged. I should have left that night. Every instinct I had developed growing up poor told me to run the second powerful men started changing my life without permission. People like Lucien DeLuca did not exist in the same world as people like me. His world was black cars and bodyguards and headlines whispered across television screens. Mine was diner coffee and overdue rent and praying the subway did not break down before my shift started. Those worlds were not supposed to touch. But somehow they already had. Lucien stopped outside room 814 and looked at me through the partially open doorway. His expression remained unreadable, but something sharpened slightly in his eyes when he noticed the fear on my face. Not anger. Recognition. Like he already knew this moment would come eventually. Margaret sighed softly from the hospital bed behind me. "Please do not glare at each other in front of my heart monitor," she muttered. "I am trying to recover in peace." Neither of us answered. Lucien stepped into the room slowly while removing the cufflinks from his sleeves one at a time. Calm movements. Controlled movements. But tension followed him tonight like a shadow. "Mother," he said quietly, "your doctor wants you resting more. Then tell your doctor to stop waking me up every 45 minutes. His attention shifted toward me again. "Miss Carter." The way he said my name now sounded different somehow. Careful. Measured. Like he understood exactly how much I had just learned about him. I swallowed hard. "I should probably go." Margaret looked immediately offended. "Absolutely not. You still owe me one chapter of that mystery novel." "Mother. Do not mother me with that face. I invented that face." Under different circumstances I might have laughed. Instead I grabbed my coat from the chair beside the window with fingers that suddenly felt clumsy. Lucien watched every movement quietly. "I can have someone drive you home," he said. "That is not necessary. It is raining. I survive weather regularly." A dangerous silence settled between us again. The kind where too much was happening underneath the words nobody said out loud. Finally Lucien stepped aside near the doorway to let me pass. But as I walked by him into the hallway, he spoke quietly enough that only I could hear. "You are afraid of me now." Not a question. Fact. I stopped walking. The fluorescent hospital lights reflected softly against the marble floor, while nurses pretended not to watch us from down the corridor. I turned slowly toward him. "I do not know you." His gray eyes held mine steadily. That was true before tonight too. The answer frustrated me because it sounded honest. People on television describe you like some kind of criminal. Television describes many things. And are they wrong? For the first time since meeting him, something cold flickered behind his eyes. Not threatening exactly. Worse. Empty. Tired. You think men like me become powerful by being gentle all the time? He asked quietly. I crossed my arms tightly against my chest. I think people are scared of you for a reason. Fear keeps certain people alive. And does it keep you alive too? Silence. Real silence this time. Heavy enough to feel. Rain hammered softly against the windows at the end of the hallway, while somewhere nearby a heart monitor beeped steadily through the darkness. Lucien looked at me for a long moment before speaking again. You should not involve yourself in my life, Evelyn. My pulse jumped hearing my first name in his voice. Calm. Deep. Dangerous for reasons I did not want to examine too closely. I never tried to, I whispered back. Then why are you still here? That question hit harder than it should have, because I did not fully know the answer anymore. Maybe it was Margaret smiling when I walked into the room. Maybe it was the exhaustion I saw behind Lucien's expensive suits. Maybe it was because somewhere along the way this hospital stopped feeling like extra work and started feeling like something dangerously close to belonging. I looked away first. Your mother is lonely, I said softly. That is not something money fixes. Something changed in his face then. Tiny. Almost invisible. But I saw it. The words reached somewhere underneath the armor. You think I do not know that? He asked quietly. I met his eyes again. I think everybody is scared of you. Another step closer. Not enough to frighten me. Enough to make my heartbeat stumble unexpectedly. Good, Lucien said softly. Because fear makes people careful. Your mother does not look careful when she talks about you. That stopped him completely. No movement. No answer. Just silence. The kind that happens when somebody accidentally touches a wound hidden beneath expensive fabric in years of control. Then, for the first time since I met him, Lucien DeLuca looked at me not like a waitress, not like a stranger, but like I had somehow seen something nobody else was supposed to notice. After that conversation in the hallway, everything between Lucien and me changed without either of us admitting it out loud. He still spoke quietly, still wore those perfectly tailored dark suits, still carried himself like a man the entire city moved around carefully. But now whenever I walked into room 814, his eyes found me immediately. Every time. Like some part of him had started expecting me there, which terrified me more than it should have. A week passed in strange, dangerous normalcy. Margaret's condition slowly improved. She smiled more, complained louder, ordered Lucien to eat actual meals instead of surviving on espresso and stress. Sometimes I caught him watching us while Margaret and I argued over crossword puzzle answers or terrible hospital television. Those moments felt strangely peaceful. Too peaceful. The universe usually punished people for getting comfortable. Friday night proved it. Rain hammered across Manhattan hard enough to flood sidewalks and turn traffic into red rivers of brake lights stretching through the city. My diner shift ended after midnight. Rick finally let me leave early because half the customers canceled reservations during the storm. I wrapped my coat tighter around myself while stepping outside Bellamy's into freezing wind sharp enough to sting my face immediately. The streets looked nearly empty. Just headlights reflecting across wet pavement and distant sirens echoing somewhere downtown. I started toward the subway station quickly, head down against the rain. That was when I noticed the black SUV, parked across the street. Engine running. Dark windows. My stomach tightened instantly. Maybe because after knowing Lucien, expensive black vehicles no longer felt ordinary. I kept walking faster. The sound of another pair of footsteps behind me matched my pace almost immediately. Slow. Close. Too close. Every nerve in my body tightened hard. I glanced back quickly. A tall man wearing a dark hooded jacket had stepped onto the sidewalk behind me. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. He sped up when I did. Panic climbed into my throat. The subway entrance still sat half a block away through pouring rain. I gripped my bag tighter and moved faster, heart pounding painfully now. The footsteps behind me kept coming. Closer. Then headlights suddenly flooded the street beside me. Tires splashed through rainwater as a black SUV pulled sharply against the curb directly in front of me. The rear passenger door opened immediately. Get in. A deep voice ordered from inside. "Lucien." Relief hit so fast my knees almost gave out from it. I climbed into the SUV without thinking twice. The second the door slammed shut, the vehicle pulled away smoothly from the curb. Warm air surrounded me instantly inside the dark leather interior, while rain crashed violently against the windows outside. My hands shook harder than I wanted him to notice. Lucien sat beside me wearing a charcoal coat over a black dress shirt, gray eyes fixed on the window behind us. Watching. Calculating. "Were you followed before tonight?" he asked calmly. "I do not know. Think carefully." My pulse still raced too hard to think clearly. "I saw someone outside the diner yesterday too," I admitted quietly. I thought maybe I was imagining it. Lucien's jaw tightened slightly. Tiny movement. Dangerous movement. The driver spoke softly from the front seat. The second vehicle turned east on Lexington. Lucien nodded once without looking away from the rain outside. Silence filled the SUV afterward. Heavy silence. Controlled silence. I tried to steady my breathing while the city blurred past outside in silver and gold lights. "This is because of you, right?" I whispered finally. Lucien looked at me then. Fully. "Probably." The honesty shocked me more than denial would have. "You should have warned me. I tried to keep distance between you and my world. You paid my bills. That was protection. This does not feel protective." Another silence. Then quieter. "No, it does not." The SUV stopped beneath the covered entrance of a private building overlooking Central Park. Doormen moved immediately beneath the rain with umbrellas already waiting. I stared out the window in confusion. "Why are we here?" "Because I am not sending you home tonight. Lucien. Until I know who is watching you, you stay somewhere secure." His tone remained calm, but underneath it sat something unfamiliar. Not just control. Fear. Real fear. The realization unsettled me deeply. Men like Lucien DeLuca probably did not fear much. Yet tonight his eyes kept scanning every reflection in the rain like he expected danger to appear from shadows at any second. He stepped out first and offered me his hand beneath the storm. I hesitated only half a second before taking it. His fingers closed gently around mine. Warm. Steady. Protective in a way that made my chest ache unexpectedly. As we crossed beneath the rain toward the private elevator, I realized something terrifying. Somewhere along the way, the safest place in Manhattan had become the side of the man everyone else feared. The elevator opened directly into silence. Real silence. The kind rich people buy with thick glass, private security, and penthouses high enough above Manhattan that the city sounded distant instead of overwhelming. I stepped slowly into Lucien's apartment while rain battered the windows stretching from floor to ceiling across the entire living room. Central Park glowed dark and silver below us like another world entirely. Everything inside looked expensive without trying to. Black marble floors. Soft lighting. Art that probably cost more than my apartment building. But somehow the place still felt cold. Not physically. Emotionally. Like nobody actually lived here long enough to leave pieces of themselves behind. Lucien removed his coat quietly and handed it to one of the security men before turning toward me. "You can stay in the guest room tonight," he said calmly. "There are clothes in the closet if you need them. You just keep emergency women's clothing in your penthouse?" The corner of his mouth moved slightly. My assistant plans for possibilities. That tiny almost smile hit me harder than it should have. Lucien disappeared briefly into another room while a woman from the staff brought me tea and dry towels. Everyone here moved carefully around him. Respectfully. Like orbiting a planet strong enough to pull people in without effort. I stood near the giant windows afterward holding the warm tea between my hands while lightning flashed faintly beyond the skyline. From up here Manhattan looked beautiful. Distant. Harmless. Which was funny considering how dangerous the city actually was after midnight. "You are shaking." I turned. Lucien stood a few feet behind me now without his coat. Dark sleeves rolled slightly past his wrists. Somehow he looked more intimidating dressed simply than he did surrounded by bodyguards. More real. "I am fine," I answered automatically. That was not true when you said it at the hospital either. I looked back toward the storm outside. "You are very observant." "I have to be." Silence settled around us softly while thunder rolled far across the city. Will someone tell me what is happening? I asked finally. Lucien stepped beside the windows, hands resting loosely in his pockets. Some people pay attention when somebody close to me appears repeatedly in public. I am not close to you. The second the words left my mouth, something shifted subtly in his expression. Not anger. Worse. Hurt. Tiny and almost invisible, but real enough that I noticed. No, he said quietly after a moment. You are not. Guilt tightened unexpectedly in my chest. I hated that feeling immediately. Lucien DeLuca was not supposed to look wounded by anything I said. He stared out across Manhattan silently before speaking again. My mother trusts very few people. That is because she is smart. She trusts you. His voice lowered slightly. That matters to me. I looked down at the untouched tea warming my hands. I did not help her because of who you are. I know. I helped her because she was lonely. I know that too. The honesty in his voice made it difficult to breathe normally for a second. Rain streaked down the giant windows while the city shimmered endlessly below us in white and gold lights. Lucien turned toward me fully then. Do you know what everybody wants from me, Evelyn? I shook my head slowly. Money, protection, influence, fear. Every conversation becomes a transaction eventually. His gray eyes held mine steadily now. You sat beside my mother because you thought nobody should be alone at night. My throat tightened unexpectedly. That should not be unusual. In my world, it is. Something about the sadness beneath those words broke my heart a little before I could stop it. For the first time since meeting him, I stopped seeing headlines and bodyguards in expensive suits. I saw exhaustion, isolation. A man so powerful the world stopped treating him human years ago. Lucien, I whispered softly. He stepped closer then. Not threatening. Careful. Like approaching something fragile. When you looked at me after seeing those news reports, he admitted quietly, I thought you would disappear. I stared at him. I almost did. Why didn't you? Because your mother smiles when you walk into the room. Because you look exhausted all the time. Because somewhere between soup containers and late-night hospital conversations, you stopped feeling dangerous and started feeling lonely. But I could not say any of that out loud. So instead I answered honestly, because I do not think bad men worry that much about their mothers. Silence. Deep and endless. Then Lucien laughed softly for the very first time since I met him. Low. Real. Tired around the edges but genuine enough to change his entire face. It stunned me completely. You are very dangerous, Evelyn Carter, he murmured quietly. Why? His eyes softened in a way that almost hurt to look at. Because you make me forget which parts of myself I buried to survive. Thunder rolled softly outside while Manhattan glittered beneath the storm. And standing there beside the man everyone else feared, I realized something neither of us could undo anymore. He ruled the city with power. But somewhere along the way, without meaning to, I had become the one thing capable of reaching the man behind it.